I flipped the coin just once. Not because I believed in fate. Not because I thought heads or tails would give me clarity. But because it was the last thing my father gave me before he died, along with a warning. The coin doesn't decide. You do. It landed on the floor of my office and spun for a second longer than it should have, like it was hesitating too. That same day, I found out that my wife was having an affair with my best friend. Her name was Savannah. His name was Mike. Mine's Alex, or at least it used to be. They thought they were clever. Thought I wouldn't notice the sudden late-night texts, the whispered phone calls in the kitchen, or the way they couldn't meet my eyes when I walked into the room. But the moment I saw Savannah's phone light up with Mike's name while she was in the shower, I knew. You can lie with words. You can lie with silence. But your eyes? They always betray you. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry. I listened. I waited. I watched them destroy the life I built without even looking over their shoulders. Mike had been my business partner for 10 years. We started from nothing. Two broke engineers in a rented garage. By the time we landed our first government contract, we were millionaires on paper. But Mike always wanted more. He wanted recognition, status, power. And when he realized he couldn't outgrow my shadow, he found another way to hurt me. Through her. Savannah and I had been married for 12 years. She was smart, articulate, charming, and ruthless in ways I hadn't seen until it was too late. I thought we built something real. We had plans. We talked about kids. We had a house in the hills, 2 cars, and a dog named Max. Turns out the only thing real was me. She stayed with me long enough to build her image. Then she moved on to someone who could give her what I thought I already had: security, attention, control. But they made one mistake. They thought I was weak. What they didn't know was that while they were celebrating their secret, I was making mine. I hired someone I trusted. A quiet guy with a quiet face. Used to work in military intelligence. Now he ran a discreet consulting firm that dealt with delicate problems. Within 2 weeks, I had footage, phone logs, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and enough screenshots to bury them both. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I started pulling strings. I liquidated 70% of our shared assets without triggering suspicion. I restructured the company behind Mike's back, rerouting key contracts through a shell corporation under my control. I prepared a soft exit plan. Legally, financially, emotionally, I was vanishing from their world piece by piece. 2 months after the coin toss, Mike pitched a new investor at a private dinner. What he didn't know was that the man across the table was my contact. And he wasn't there to invest. He was there to record everything. 3 days later, I walked into our office like nothing had happened. Mike was grinning, showing off the new watch Savannah had bought him. He offered me a drink. I smiled and took it. He toasted to the future. I drank to the end. That night, I handed Savannah divorce papers. No yelling. No accusations. Just a folder and silence. She looked at the envelope like it was a bomb. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Long enough." She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just stared at me like I'd flipped the board in the middle of their little game. The next morning, she found her accounts frozen. The car keys gone. The security codes changed. Mike, meanwhile, was hit with a full audit, courtesy of an anonymous whistleblower. Me. Every fraudulent invoice, every off-the-books payment, every lie we covered up together in the early years, suddenly exposed. He called me. Once. I didn't answer. Savannah showed up at my office 2 days later. Said she made a mistake. That she never meant to hurt me. That she got lost. "You don't destroy someone you love," I said. "You protect them. Even when they fail. Especially when they fail." Her hands trembled. "So you're just going to erase me?" "I'm not erasing anything," I said. "I'm letting the truth do the work." She whispered, "I never thought you had it in you." And that's when I smiled for the first time in weeks. You never really knew me at all. I thought I'd feel free after everything came crashing down, like cutting a rope that had been strangling me. Instead, I felt quiet. Not peace. Not pride. Just quiet. After the divorce was finalized, I sold the house and moved into a rental under another name. I left no forwarding address. No traceable accounts. No breadcrumbs. For the first time in my life, I wanted to live in the background. People like Savannah and Mike, they thrive on visibility. Attention is their currency. Take that away, and you starve them more effectively than any courtroom ruling. They tried to stay afloat at first. Mike attempted to spin the audit as a routine review, but my anonymous evidence kept surfacing in places he couldn't anticipate. A canceled contract here, a denied loan there. Nothing direct, nothing illegal. Just the weight of facts landing where it hurt the most, his credibility. Savannah, meanwhile, leaned into her performance. Tears in public. Carefully curated social media posts about healing. She even tried to reach out to a few of my former clients, suggesting we'd split amicably and asking if they needed independent strategy consulting. One of them forwarded her message to me with the subject line, "You good?" I was better than good. I was methodical. I didn't want to ruin them just for sport. That would have made me like them. But I did want them to understand something they never had. Choices have weight. And betrayal, no matter how pretty you dress it, is still a knife. Mike eventually tried to sell his shares in the company I'd quietly gutted from the inside. By then, its valuation had dropped 60%. He panicked and sued me for mismanagement. That was his biggest mistake, because I'd kept records. All of them. Emails, messages, call logs, contracts he signed without reading, internal memos he dismissed. Everything. We sat across from each other in a conference room during the mediation. He didn't look confident anymore. He looked like someone who knew the walls were closing in but didn't want to admit it. "You can't do this," he said. "I already did," I answered. He tried to appeal to our past, stories from our early years, nights we stayed up coding prototypes, dreaming of success. "Those memories don't belong to you anymore," I said. "You cashed them in the moment you crossed the line." He lost the case. And the company. Savannah called me a week later. It went to voicemail. "I don't know who you've become," she said, her voice tight, like she'd rehearsed it. "But I hope you know what this cost you too." It hadn't cost me anything I wasn't already willing to lose. I disappeared again. Only this time, I wasn't hiding. I was starting over. I moved to a small city on the West Coast and joined a startup in an advisory role. Low profile. Just what I needed. The team didn't know my story. They knew what I could do. That was enough. For a while, I let the past sit where it was, untouched. I focused on building again. Nothing flashy. Just honest, focused work. The kind of work that doesn't demand attention but earns respect. Then something strange happened. People started coming to me. Quietly. Men, mostly, who'd been betrayed in different ways. Business partners. Siblings. Wives. Best friends. Some of them had lost everything. Others just their direction. But all of them carried the same wound I knew too well. The kind that isn't visible but reshapes everything. I didn't offer them revenge. I offered them clarity. Don't waste energy trying to teach people who already chose themselves over you. I said. Use it to build a life where they don't exist anymore. And slowly, I realized that was the real reset. Not what I did to Savannah or Mike, but what I was doing now, showing others how to walk out of the fire without becoming ash. One evening, while walking to my car, I saw a familiar figure waiting by the curb. Heather, Savannah's younger sister. She'd always stayed out of the drama, but I hadn't seen her in years. She looked nervous. "I wasn't sure you'd remember me," she said. "I do. She's not doing well," she added. "Who? You know who?" I didn't answer. "She's alone, broke, and still thinks you'll forgive her someday." "That's not what this is about," I said. Heather hesitated, then asked the question people like to avoid. "Do you still hate her?" "No," I said honestly. "I just stopped believing she deserved the version of me that loved her." Heather nodded. She didn't ask for anything else. She just wanted to know how it all ended. But it didn't end. Not really. The truth is, revenge isn't fire. It's ice. It doesn't burn you. It hardens you. Until the people who once hurt you can scream your name in the dark and you'll never turn your head again. I didn't expect to hear from Mike again. But men like him don't disappear quietly. They circle back when they think enough time has passed, when they assume your memory has softened. It had been a year since I'd seen his name on anything, until he showed up at my workplace. I was walking out of a meeting when I saw him near the front entrance. Leaner, dressed for effect, trying too hard to look stable. He didn't belong there. He hadn't even checked in with security. He raised his hand like we were old friends. "Just a few minutes," he said. I didn't answer. Just walked past him. He followed me outside. "I get it," he said. "You hate me. You should. I ruined a lot. But I've changed, man. I've had time to think. Time to grow." People always say that when they've lost their audience. When consequences finally catch up and there's no applause left. "I need your help," he added. There it was. The real reason. "I'm not a charity," I said. "It's not charity. It's business. I've got a new idea. Real tech. Real traction. Just needs seed backing. 25 grand. Maybe less. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm offering equity." He had the same confidence in his voice that used to convince investors to write six-figure checks. The difference now was that I could hear the desperation underneath it. "You don't get to build your future with the same hands you used to destroy someone else's," I said. "Find another investor." He wasn't expecting that. His face shifted, polite mask cracking, frustration leaking through. "You're really going to hold a grudge forever?" "No. Just long enough to make sure you don't get the chance to hurt someone else." He laughed, bitter and low. You think you're better than me now? Because you pulled the strings for a few years? You got lucky. I made a mistake. She made a mistake. But you're still acting like you're God. I didn't flinch. I'd spent too long rebuilding myself to let his words land. Then he said something that made me stop. She's dying. It hit like a pause in my lungs. He saw that, used it. Savannah's sick. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3. She didn't want me to tell you. But she's alone. She thought maybe you'd come see her if you knew. I looked at him, searching for the trick. Don't do that, I said. Don't weaponize sympathy to get what you want. I'm not lying. You can call the hospital if you don't believe me. He handed me a piece of paper. Room number. Clinic. Her full name. I'm not asking you to forgive her, he said. But no one deserves to die thinking they're unworthy of being looked in the eye. He left me standing there. For 2 days, I didn't go near that piece of paper. I told myself it was manipulation. I told myself I didn't care. But that wasn't true. The problem wasn't whether I cared. The problem was whether I could face her without unraveling the boundary I had drawn. On the 3rd day, I drove to the hospital. I didn't bring flowers or closure. I brought presents. That's all. She was thinner, pale, but still carried the same guarded posture I remembered. Even sick, she tried to manage the narrative. You didn't have to come, she said. I didn't come for you, I replied. I came for the part of me you broke. She nodded slowly. I've thought about that day 1,000 times, she said. The silence. The way you looked at me. I deserved worse. I didn't argue. She reached for water, her hand shaking. You built a new life, she said. I see it sometimes. People send me things. You help others now. You turn pain into something useful. I learned to stop feeding ghosts. A pause. Then, do you hate me? I didn't answer immediately. I don't feel anything toward you anymore, I said. That's worse than hate. She blinked fast, but didn't cry. Maybe she'd already used up her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. Not for the affair. Not just for that. I'm sorry for treating your love like it was disposable. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the monitor beside her. I used to wonder, she continued, how far you'd go, what you'd do to get back at us. But you didn't destroy us. You let the truth do it. It was never about revenge, I said. It was about reminding myself that I still had value, even if the people closest to me couldn't see it. She nodded, weakly. I'm glad you came. I stood to leave. There won't be a second visit, I said. She didn't ask for one. I walked out of the hospital with no weight on my shoulders. No rage. No regret. Just space. People like to say forgiveness sets you free. But sometimes, it's distance that does it better. The clean, undeniable distance between who you were and who you've chosen to become. End of part 3. I didn't expect peace after walking out of that hospital. And I didn't get it. What I got was clarity, sharp, dry, and permanent. I had crossed the last bridge back to the life I once had. And for the first time, I didn't feel tempted to look over my shoulder. For a few months, I poured everything into my work. No drama. No distractions. Just structure. It wasn't passion, it was purpose. The kind that doesn't require applause. That's probably why Daniel found me. He was introduced through someone I trusted, a lawyer I'd worked with quietly, who handled sensitive exit strategies for men caught in the crosshairs of betrayal or manipulation. Daniel was 32, CEO of a fast-growing digital firm. Clean record, clean numbers, rising reputation, and on the edge of collapse. We met in private, off the record. He didn't want headlines. He wanted strategy. My brother and I co-founded the company, he said. Built it from our garage. 5 years later, he's been siphoning funds, lying to investors, and using my name to shield himself. Does he know you found out? I asked. No. He thinks I'm still covering for him. I nodded once. That's good. That gives you the element of control. What do you want? Justice or survival? Both, Daniel said without hesitation. Most people pause at that question. He didn't. I took the case. For 6 weeks, we worked in silence. I mapped out the damage. He gathered data. Bank records, internal emails, forged documents. The evidence wasn't just damning, it was brutal. His brother, Liam, had built a second life with the money he stole. Vacation homes, luxury cars, offshore holdings, all while feeding Daniel lines about cash flow issues. And the worst part? Their parents still believed Liam was the visionary of the family. Said Daniel was too stiff, too rigid, not emotionally intelligent enough to lead. Do you want to tell them the truth? I asked. I want them to see it themselves, he said. He reminded me of who I used to be. Measured, focused, burning quietly from the inside. But here's where things got complicated. 3 days before Daniel was set to initiate legal action and expose the fraud, I got a call from Liam. He'd somehow figured out my name. Probably through one of the shell firms I used to mask involvement. He didn't threaten. He didn't beg. He invited me to dinner. I declined. He sent me an address anyway. Just hear my side, the message read. I should have ignored it. But curiosity has its own gravity. I showed up late, stayed standing, never took off my coat. Liam didn't act guilty. He acted calculated. Like someone rehearsing sincerity. He started slow, childhood memories, business talk, the usual deflections. Then he pivoted. You're guiding him into a war he doesn't understand, he said. You think you're helping him, but you're turning him into you. What does that mean? He smiled like he knew something I didn't. Look at yourself. You call it justice, but what you really want is control. You found power in pain, and now you sell that power to other broken men who don't know what else to do with their anger. I didn't answer. You're not healing people, he said. You're recruiting them. That one hit deeper than I expected. I left without responding, but the words followed me. That night, I looked at Daniel's file again. Not the data, the photos. Two brothers, shoulder to shoulder in their first office. Faces still full of belief. The kind you only get before someone teaches you betrayal. Was I about to break the last part of Daniel that still believed in anything good? The next morning, I met Daniel for coffee. You can win this, I told him. But winning comes at a cost. You might expose him. You might even reclaim the company. But you won't get your brother back. Not even a version of him. He didn't flinch. I already lost him, he said. Now I just want to stop him from hurting anyone else. I nodded. You don't owe him mercy, I said. But make sure you don't lose your own humanity trying to punish his. Daniel carried out the plan. Quietly, legally, strategically. No headlines. No public humiliation. Just a clean severance. Liam was forced out, his assets frozen, and the board realigned behind Daniel. The company survived. So did Daniel's dignity. After it was over, he sent me a note. I thought I wanted revenge. What I really needed was to know I could protect what mattered. You gave me that. Thank you. I kept that message. Because that was the line I'd learned to walk. Not revenge. Not forgiveness. Just the ability to draw a line in the sand and not cross it. I always thought boundaries were something you drew once. Then you learn there's something you defend every single day. It started with a message. Short. Unassuming. I need to see you. Heather. I hadn't heard from Savannah's sister in almost a year. Not since that short, strange conversation outside the hospital. I ignored it. For a week. Then she sent another. It's about your father. That stopped everything. My father had been dead for over a decade. Or so I thought. The truth landed heavier. Heather met me in a quiet part of town, neutral territory. She didn't waste time. Your father's alive, she said. And he's looking for you. I thought she was joking at first. Or trying to manipulate me into something. But her tone wasn't dramatic. Just flat. You told me he died. I said. I told you what I was told. Your mom. Savannah's mom. They covered it. He left. Disappeared. He wasn't dead, just erased. Heather handed me a folder. Documents. A few photographs. Letters. He was living under a different name in Nevada. Not hiding, just starting over. I don't understand. Why now? He reached out to me. He said he's sick. Terminal. He wants to see you. I stared at the name on the envelope. Michael A. Reeves. Same handwriting. Same signature from my childhood birthday cards. The same man I'd buried in my memory because the alternative was worse, abandonment. Why are you in the middle of this? I asked. He didn't know how to reach you. He found me. Thought I might still have your number. I debated for weeks before saying anything. Why tell me now? Because I saw what it did to you, watching someone die with things left unsaid. And maybe I didn't want to carry that kind of silence again. I took the file, but gave her nothing back. 3 days passed before I opened it. The first photo was blurry. He looked older. Tired. He was working as a mechanic, living in a modest town outside Reno. I remembered the smell of his hands when he'd come home from the garage when I was a kid. Always oil and metal. He had written me 3 letters. None of them asked for forgiveness. He just wanted to talk. To explain why he left. Why he broke our family. Why he couldn't face what he had done. I'd spent years becoming a man built on control. On knowing every outcome. But this was unknown territory. I didn't know what I wanted. Closure, revenge, or nothing at all. I made the drive anyway. 5 hours of silence. No music. No thoughts I was willing to finish. When I pulled into the gravel lot behind the shop, he was there. Sitting on an old bench, drinking black coffee from a paper cup. He stood when he saw me. Not to embrace me, just to acknowledge I was real. I didn't think you'd come, he said. I didn't think I would either. We sat in silence. He looked out toward the street. You want me to say sorry first, or explain what happened? I want to hear why you disappeared. He exhaled slowly. I was 29. I thought I knew how to be a man. Turns out I only knew how to run. He told me everything. The debt, the drinking, the arguments with my mother, the shame. The moment he realized that staying meant destroying everything anyway. So he left, hoping it would be less harmful if he wasn't there at all. But I was wrong, he said. Absence doesn't save people. It just makes space for new kinds of damage. I didn't interrupt. I didn't know how to come back. And the longer I waited, the harder it became. I kept telling myself you'd be better off thinking I was dead. You lied to yourself so you wouldn't have to face what you'd done. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. For a while, we just sat there. Then he said something I didn't expect. You turned into someone strong. I followed you from a distance. After the divorce, after your business. I read your articles, saw the talks you gave. I knew what kind of pain had shaped you. And I'm sorry I gave you some of that. I don't want your apology, I said. I want to know what you want now. I don't want to die pretending I didn't have a son. I stayed longer than I planned. Hours passed. We didn't hug. We didn't say we loved each other. But when I left, he said something that stayed with me. Pain either teaches you to destroy or rebuild. You figured out how to do both. On the drive home, I realized something. I'd built my life around clean endings, burning bridges, closed chapters. But some wounds don't close. Some stay open, not because they can't heal, but because they force you to feel. And maybe that's not a weakness. Maybe that's what keeps you from becoming the thing you escaped. You think the past ends when you walk away from it. You think if you burn it down, there's nothing left to return to. But sometimes the past doesn't chase you. It waits. It was a Thursday when Elijah showed up at my door. 24, sharp, driven, and unraveling. He wasn't family, not a close friend. Just one of the young professionals I'd mentored over the last few years. He'd reached out 6 months earlier after being pushed out of his startup by 2 co-founders who diluted his shares and stolen his idea. I'd helped him build back. Quietly. Strategically. Taught him how to protect himself. How to think 5 moves ahead. He reminded me of myself, before everything burned. But that day, Elijah wasn't looking for guidance. He was looking for permission. They're vulnerable now, he said. One got divorced. The other's being investigated for insider trading. I have a way to bury them. All I need is your contact. The one who handled your restructuring. He wasn't asking out of spite. He was asking because he'd already decided to strike. He just needed me to hand him the blade. I taught you how to rebuild, I said. Not how to destroy. You taught me how to win. And right now, winning means making sure they never stand up again. I watched him. Same fire I once carried. Same focus. Same thirst for justice that quickly becomes something darker if you're not careful. I could ruin them cleanly, he said. Quietly. Just like you did. That was the moment I realized what I'd created. Not a student. A reflection. You want what I had, I said. Not the result, the rush. He didn't deny it. They deserve it. They probably do, I replied. But so did mine. And I still lost something I'll never get back. What? Softness. Elijah looked confused. Angry. I didn't come here for a speech. No. You came here to see if the man who rebuilt you would help you destroy someone else. A long silence. Then, if it were today, would you still do it? He didn't mean the technical plan. He meant the whole thing. The coldness, the exile, the emotional shutdown I wore like armor for 5 years. I'd do it differently, I said. You'd let them walk? No. But I'd stop pretending that revenge and healing are the same thing. They're not. One gives you control. The other gives you peace. Pick one. You don't get both. Elijah didn't answer. He stared at the ground for a long time. When he finally spoke, it was slower. I thought you were the only one who understood. I do. That's why I'm stopping you. He stood up. No anger. Just disappointment. Then maybe I outgrew your advice. No, I said. You just haven't finished learning what it costs. He left. I didn't follow. That night, I pulled out a letter. The one my father had written before he died a few weeks earlier. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't know if I was ready to hear his last thoughts. But after Elijah left, something shifted. The letter was short. I hope you never forget how to stay kind. It's the hardest thing a man can do after being broken. That was it. No final confession. No justifications. Just the one thing he hadn't known how to be himself. Kind. The next morning, I called Elijah. He didn't answer. So I sent him a message. I won't stop you. But if you do this, make sure you're not becoming them in the process. He replied 6 hours later. I didn't send the files. Not yet. I didn't ask what changed his mind. I didn't offer praise. Sometimes all people need is space to remember who they are before they become what hurt them. Weeks passed. Elijah started something new. He didn't say what happened to the men who betrayed him, but I could guess. He'd chosen peace. Not because he was weak. Because he finally understood what strength costs. As for me, I moved again. Not to escape. Not to erase anything. but because I'd finally learned the difference between walking away and moving forward. This was never a story about revenge. It was a story about survival, about learning to stop bleeding in silence, about drawing a line between justice and destruction, and knowing which side you're willing to stand on when no one's watching. They say the best revenge is living well. They're wrong. The best revenge is no longer needing it.